"Sir, you must leave now." The words cut through the air like blades, tearing through the proud murmur that filled the main auditorium of the Fortaleza Brava Academy. The sound of laughter and hushed conversation ceased, replaced by an uneasy, heavy silence, as if even the air had retreated. The hall was impeccably lit, spotlights highlighting the rows of navy blue uniforms and the gold of newly polished insignias. In every seat, families smiled and settled in, awaiting the solemn moment when their sons and daughters would receive their decorations and the title of elite Navy officers. That was the day when years of blood, sweat, and tears of training finally found meaning. But for Sergeant Elias Vance, that moment meant more than that. He was in the third row, in full dress uniform, a ceremonial uniform that looked as if it had been ironed with the precision of a scalpel. His beard trimmed, his gaze firm, his body still erect despite the invisible scars that time and combat had left. His chest bore medals, but none were displayed with vanity. Each one weighed heavily. Each one reminded him of names he would never forget. Elias raised his face when he heard the firm voice behind him. Two Academy security men, black uniforms, tense expressions, had approached, imposing themselves with the kind of rigidity only those who confuse authority with power can display. "Sergeant Elias Vance," the first one said, with a tone that sounded more like a sentence than a question. "That's me," Elias replied, without standing up. The second man consulted something on a small electronic terminal strapped to his forearm. The gazes of those nearby began to shift discreetly, pretending not to see, but attentive to every movement. "You need to leave," the first security guard repeated, "direct orders from administration." A murmur swept through the hall. Elias kept his gaze fixed straight ahead, on the stage where the Navy emblem gleamed against a dark blue background. There, among the aligned cadets, he saw Liam, his son, standing stiff, his expression disciplined, but his eyes betrayed something: concern. Elias did not respond immediately. He inhaled slowly. The voices of the security guards became distant echoes. Memories flooded him: the smell of gunpowder, the sound of propellers in the desert, the commander's voice ordering evacuation under heavy fire. 20 years of service, 20 years of renunciations, lost birthdays, forgotten holidays, the look of a child waiting for his father to return, and the silent promise that one day he would make up for everything. Today was that day. But the words "you must leave" destroyed everything he had hoped to feel. The first security guard leaned in slightly in a threatening posture. "Sir, please, don't make this more difficult." Elias finally stood up. The hall seemed to shrink. His movement was controlled, but the tension in his shoulders revealed the volcano under control. He measured the men in front of him, not as a civilian would measure two agents, but as a soldier assesses potential threats. "May I know why?" he asked, his voice low but laced with steel. The security guards exchanged glances. The second one cleared his throat. "Superior orders, sir. They concern the security of the ceremony." The word security sounded almost ironic. Elias gave a bitter half-smile. Security, of course. He looked around. And what part of my presence threatens anyone's security here? No one answered. Across the hall, Liam took a hesitant step forward. The look he exchanged with his father said more than 1,000 words. A plea for calm, a plea for faith. But Elias felt an ancient weight growing within him. That kind of silent injustice, the prejudice masked as protocol. He knew what was happening, the old rumors, the distrust, the internal politics. Still, he remained motionless. The first security guard, perhaps thinking the silence was a sign of surrender, touched Elias's arm. It was a mistake. "Touch me again and you'll regret it," Elias said, without raising his voice. The words cut through the air like a dry gust. A collective gasp swept through the hall. The touch ceased immediately. The first security guard stepped back, his hand trembling slightly. The second discreetly reached for the radio on his belt. Before he could speak, a new voice emerged from the back of the auditorium. "I advise you to take a step back." The tone was calm, but there was an authority so dense that the air seemed to vibrate. 4 figures rose from the last row. Dark uniforms, discreet insignias, cold gazes. They were not ordinary guests. They were instructors from the Aquatic Tactical Force, better known as Black Cloaks. Men and women who trained the country's best maritime operatives, specialists in infiltration, submarine combat, and strategic rescue. Living legends. And they were there, not as spectators, but as sentinels. The security guards hesitated. One of them swallowed hard. "This is none of your business," he tried to argue, but his voice failed. The tallest of the 4 black cloaks took a step forward. He had the posture of someone who had seen the worst of the world and returned whole, the kind of man who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. "Sergeant Vance has more combat experience than everyone in this room combined," he said, in a serene yet cutting tone. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" The silence became absolute. Even the distant sound of the air conditioning seemed to have ceased. The security guards looked at each other again. The first, sweating, spoke into the radio in an almost inaudible whisper. Elias didn't move, he just watched. From the stage, Liam could no longer resist. He took 2 steps forward, breaking the cadets' formation, something unthinkable at a ceremony of that magnitude. His voice echoed through the auditorium. "He's my father." The murmur grew like a wave. People stood up, whispering, "Father? Sergeant Vance? But he—" The black cloaks remained motionless, like shadows. Then, the sound of firm footsteps echoed through the central corridor. Commander Alaric, director of the Fortaleza Brava Academy, advanced. He had a stern face, an expression of steel, and eyes that had seen wars and politics too closely. His uniform was impeccable, but what caught attention was his look of pure indignation. "Step aside." His voice sounded like contained thunder. The security guards obeyed immediately. The first almost stumbled as he retreated. The black cloaks did not move. Alaric stopped before Elias. There was a second of silence between them, full of history and hierarchy. The commander took a deep breath, looked around, and then extended his hand. "Sergeant Vance, I apologize on behalf of this academy." His voice was firm, but there was sincerity there. "Your son's ceremony will not begin without you." The audience held its breath. The security guards, pale, seemed to wish they could disappear. But Elias did not shake his hand. He remained motionless. The damage was done. The public humiliation, the looks from people, the reminder that, even after everything, they still saw him as a shadow of the past. He looked at Liam. He saw pride and pain reflected in his son's eyes. For the first time in 20 years, Elias wondered if the country he bled for saw him as one of its own. Then, something changed. Liam, before everyone, raised his hand to his forehead and saluted. Not to Commander Alaric, not to the flag, but to his father. The entire room fell silent. The dry sound of the salute seemed to echo louder than any applause. Elias held his breath. His heart, hardened by years of service, faltered for an instant. Behind him, the 4 black cloaks straightened up, in a subtle gesture, a silent salute. Commander Alaric slowly lowered the hand that was still waiting to be shaken. He understood. At that instant, he understood that certain hierarchies are small in the face of loyalty. When the ceremony began, Elias was in the front row. The security guards had disappeared. And when Liam received his diploma, the 4 black cloaks were unequivocally by his side, as witnesses that, on that day, honor spoke louder than protocol. Because some battles are not won with weapons, they are won with loyalty. And nobody, absolutely nobody, messes with a Marine's family. The Atlantic wind roared like an ancient animal, kicking up salt and spray as the tactical boat cut through the waves under the moonlight. Sergeant Elias Vance, then 34 years old, held tight to the steel cable alongside his men. 6 faces painted black, controlled breathing, eyes like blades, all awaiting the green light. The mission was simple on paper: infiltrate a coastal facility used by pirates hired to intercept Navy supply convoys. But no open sea operation is simple, and Elias knew that. When the sea rages, even the gods fall silent. 30 seconds, the pilot warned over the radio. Elias adjusted his helmet, looked to the left. The sea gleamed under the moonlight. The distant hum of the reconnaissance drones buzzed. To the right, Corporal Torres made the sign of the cross. Elias almost smiled. 30 seconds, he thought. In 30 seconds, the world changes. The explosion came sooner than expected. A flash cut across the horizon. The boat spun, thrown by the shockwave. Elias grabbed the first man who was launched, feeling the impact go through his shoulder. A deafening hum filled the world. The boat capsized, water and fire mixed. Then, silence. When he came to, he was half submerged, his vest inflated, his shoulder throbbing. He heard muffled shouts, metal creaking, lights flashing on the surface. "Torres," he yelled, spitting water. "Here," the voice came a few meters away, hoarse, gasping. "The charge detonated early, Sergeant." Elias slammed to him, pulled the soldier back. The sea was full of debris, pieces of vessels and bodies.
He saw the reflection of the flame, floating, distorted, as if the ocean was looking back at him. "To the shore," he ordered, dragging the man. "Keep your head above water." The shore was a distant black line. His shoulder ached like fire. He felt the warm blood mixing with the icy water. The distant sound of support helicopters came minutes later, too late for half of his team. They were rescued at dawn, when the sea, tired of roaring, finally rested. Of the 6 men, only 3 survived. For weeks, Elias dreamed of that flash, not with fear, but with anger. Anger for having let it happen. It was during that time that the Black Cloaks got to know him. The investigation into the incident revealed sabotage, explosives tampered with by corrupt suppliers. The operation had been rigged from the start. Elias testified in military court, facing generals who saw him as a thorn in their side. But he stood firm. He named names. He refused deals. He lost the chance for promotion. But he gained something few men achieve: the absolute respect of the Black Cloaks. They called him, in a half-joking, half-reverent tone, the Iron Silence. Because Elias didn't talk much, but when he did, everyone listened. Years later, in a modest lodging at Kingsport Base, Elias sat on the edge of the bed, meticulously cleaning a disassembled pistol. On the nightstand, a photo: a 7-year-old boy, brown hair and a shy smile, with a folded letter beside it. Liam. The letter came from school. Another notice of absence from parent-teacher meetings. Another reminder of a world Elias always tried, but never managed to reach. War swallowed everything: time, affection, promises. He looked up at the ceiling. That lodging had become his home and his prison. The sound of night jets, the crunch of boots in the corridors, the smell of oil and reheated coffee. Everything was too familiar. But in that silence, sometimes, what hurt most was the echo of his own solitude. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," Elias said, without lifting his head. It was Lieutenant Ward, one of the Black Cloaks. A thin man, with clear eyes and a humor that rarely showed. He held a brown envelope in his hands. "Unofficial summons," he said, handing over the envelope. "Operation Hydra, coastal, high priority." Elias took it, read quickly. "Reconnaissance and hostage extraction in foreign territorial waters. No flag, no insignia. Ghost mission." "And the real reason?" he asked. Ward gave a half smile. "Let's just say someone is messing with Navy supply routes again." He paused. "And no one wants it to make the news." Elias nodded. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow, 0300. Ward watched him for a moment. "And Vance, I heard your boy is going into the academy next semester." Elias stopped, the cleaning rod still in his hand. Yes, he decided to follow the same path. Ward crossed his arms, leaning against the door. "Does he know what it costs?" Elias sighed. "Not yet, but he will learn." The lieutenant nodded slowly. "You could take leave, you know. It's what any father would do." Elias stared at him. "I am not any father." Ward let out a short laugh. "No, that's true." He made to leave but stopped. "Just remember one thing, Iron Silence. The uniform weighs less than absence." The door closed. Elias stood there, motionless. The echo of those words stuck in his mind. That night, he wrote a letter he never sent. "Liam, if you ever read this, I want you to know that every absence of mine had a purpose. I failed to be present, but I never failed to think of you. The world out there is tough. The uniform is a burden and an honor. If you ever wear it, earn it, but never let it make you forget who you are." He put the letter in the drawer, turned off the light, and left the next morning. Operation Hydra became one of the most talked about and then silenced tactical actions of the last 20 years. A civilian ship hijacked by mercenaries in neutral waters. 15 hostages, no air support. The Black Cloaks entered in the dead of night, gliding through the waves like specters. Elias led the incursion team, his face covered in black grease, his gaze fixed on the illuminated hull in the distance. The operation lasted 27 minutes, 15 hostages freed, 0 civilian casualties. Elias was wounded in the leg, but refused evacuation until the last man was off the ship. Afterwards, silence, mission classified, no medals, no news. But among the Black Cloaks, that day became legend. The man who never retreated, the Marine who went in last and came out last. Years passed. Liam grew up. Elias saw him for the last time before graduation in a small roadside cafe on a rainy morning. Liam wore the blue uniform of the Naval Academy. His face still carried youth, but his eyes already had his father's glint.
"So, that's it," Liam said, stirring his mug. "In 2 months, tactical training begins." Elias watched his son for a while. "Are you sure?" Liam chuckled softly. "I am. I want to be like you." Elias leaned back, crossing his arms. "Don't want to be like me, boy. The path I chose exacts a high price." "But was it worth it?" Liam asked. The silence stretched. Elias looked away, out the window. The rain fell fine, translucent, washing the world. "Sometimes it is. Other times, not so much." He returned his bays to his son. "The problem is, by the time you realize the cost, there's no turning back." Liam nodded slowly. "I know, but it's what I want." Elias looked at him with a mixture of pride and concern. "Then just promise one thing. Never let them tell you that the blood in your veins makes you less worthy." Liam frowned. "What do you mean by that?" Elias offered a half smile. "You'll understand when you get there." He paid the bill, stood up, and squeezed his son's shoulder. "And son, when the time comes to choose between regulation and what's right, choose what's right. Always." Fate, as always, played its part. At Fort Brave Academy, months later, Liam Vance became the first cadet to complete the tactical diving course in record time.
His instructors, the Black Cloaks themselves, called him Echo, because, they said, every order he heard from his father seemed to echo in his actions. Elias, guest of honor for the graduation, arrived early. He sat discreetly in the third row, his gaze proud. He did not know, however, that his presence would be questioned, that bureaucratic orders would try to remove him from his own son, that ancient ghosts, political, not military, still pursued him. But deep down, perhaps he knew, because men like Elias Vance never live without enemies. The clock showed 09:57 when a heavy silence finally settled in the auditorium of Fort Brave Academy. The security guards were still there, motionless, caught between the order they had received and the presence of 4 of the Navy's most feared instructors, the Black Cloaks. Elias Vance remained standing, not touching Commander Alaric's extended hand. People in the nearby rows held their breath. The sound of every movement seemed to echo too much. The awkwardness was palpable. An invisible splinter of tension pierced the entire hall. Liam on stage maintained a rigid posture, but his eyes burned, not with anger, but with something more complex. It was wounded pride. It was love at war. It was a soldier's son watching his father being treated like an intruder in a home he helped build. Commander Alaric slowly withdrew his hand without losing composure. "This is a misunderstanding that should not have happened," he said, his deep voice echoing through the sound system. "Sergeant Vance has free access to these premises." It was a gesture of restraint, but too late. The damage was done. The visibly uncomfortable security guards backed up a few more steps. The first of them, the one who had touched Elias's arm, avoided the veteran's gaze. He knew that at that moment, he had made a mistake he would never forget. The Black Cloaks behind them maintained an alert posture, observing every detail. The tallest of them, Lieutenant Ward, the same man who years earlier had handed Elias the summons for Operation Hydra, crossed his arms, his expression neutral, but his eyes glowing. It was the kind of look that said, "One more false step, and you'll find out what real discipline is." Meanwhile, Liam kept his focus on his father. He had learned during the course that in combat, silence speaks louder than orders. And at that moment, Elias's silence said everything. Liam remembered the nights he stayed awake as a child, waiting for the sound of his father's car engine, the uniform that smelled of metal, the brief letters with short phrases, "I'm fine, keep studying." He also remembered the rare times Elias appeared at school presentations, in uniform, discreet, watching from the back and disappearing before anyone noticed him. Now he saw him there, in the same background as always, but surrounded by stares. And he knew, instinctively somehow, that he couldn't let that continue. "Commander, sir," Liam said, his voice firm. All eyes turned to him. The young cadet took a deep breath. His heart was beating fast, but his training kept him in control. "I request permission to speak." Commander Alaric stared at him for a moment. Granted, Liam descended the stage steps. The echo of his boots on the polished floor sounded like a martial drum. He passed before the rows of cadets, families, instructors. No one dared to interrupt him. He stopped before his father. And there, before hundreds of witnesses, he raised his hand to his forehead and saluted. A simple gesture, but laden with meaning. The entire audience fell silent. The sound of the gesture, the dry clack of the arm hitting the uniform, echoed like thunder. Elias blinked slowly, absorbing the moment. His chest felt heavy. Pride and pain mingled into something he couldn't name. Behind them, the Black Cloaks lined up, 4 motionless figures in a position of respect. It was the kind of scene no ceremony plans for, but that no manual could erase. Commander Alaric stood firm, but his expression had changed. The look of harshness gave way to something more human. He took a step forward, his voice grave. "Sergeant Vance, you are welcome here." He paused. "You always have been." Elias looked at him, then at his son, and finally nodded, not like someone accepting an apology, but like someone granting forgiveness to an entire system. Alaric took a deep breath. "Let's continue with the ceremony," he said. The following minutes passed in reverent silence. Each speech seemed more restrained, each applause heavier. The names of the cadets echoed through the auditorium, but it was impossible to ignore what had happened. Liam felt his father's gaze in the audience. When he stepped onto the stage to receive his diploma and Navy insignias, his hands did not tremble. The black cloak stood beside him, in a position of honor. Elite instructors rarely attended ceremonies, but on that day, they were all there. Alaric made a point of calling Liam personally. "Cadet Liam Vance, final step of the ceremony," he announced. Liam took 3 steps forward. He received his diploma, lifted his chin, and maintained perfect posture. But when Alaric extended his hand to shake it, Liam looked away and said, loud enough to echo in the room, "Commander, with your permission, there is someone who deserves this before me." Silence returned. Liam turned to the audience. Camera flashes began to pop, murmurs grew. He descended from the stage, walked through the central aisle, and stopped before his father. Elias watched him, motionless, his eyes welling up without admitting it. Liam extended the diploma. "Everything I am is because of you." Elias tried to speak, but his voice failed. He just placed his hand firmly on his son's shoulder. "The credit is yours, boy. I just taught you not to bow your head." The audience, not knowing how to react, began to applaud timidly. First a small group, then more, until the entire hall rose in applause. Some officers tried to stop the gesture, but Commander Alaric himself stood up and applauded along. Because in that moment, everyone understood. It wasn't about a broken protocol. It was about restored respect. After the ceremony, as families dispersed through the illuminated courtyard, Elias remained seated, gazing at the sea in the distance. The wind blew cold, bringing the smell of salt and kerosene from the docks. The black cloaks approached. Ward was the first to speak. "Nice scene, Iron Silence," he smiled wryly. "It's been a long time since I saw a commander swallow his pride in public." Elias let out a brief laugh. "He's a good man. He just forgot what it means to be a soldier." The other 3 joined them. One of them, a woman with short hair and sharp eyes named Marin, crossed her arms. "I still don't know who gave the order to remove you from there." "I do," Elias replied, looking at the horizon. The others stared at him. "You do?" Elias nodded. "Politics, old enemies. When you tell too much truth in military courts, you create ghosts. And ghosts sometimes wear uniforms." Ward took a deep breath. "Do you want us to investigate?" Elias shook his head. "No, this dies today." What mattered was the boy. He turned to them with that tired half smile, and he showed he understood everything I tried to teach him. The 4 looked at him for a moment. Marin broke the silence. "You know you'll always have a place among us, don't you?" Elias chuckled softly. "I already have my place. It's there." He pointed to Liam, who was talking to colleagues and officers, his uniform gleaming under the sunset. Ward nodded. "Then I guess it's time to let the past rest." Elias shrugged. "The past never rests, Ward, but sometimes it learns to be quiet." The black cloaks exchanged glances, and then, as if they had received a silent order, they saluted the veteran. Elias returned the gesture, slowly. When Liam finally approached, the sun was already sinking into the sea. "I thought you had left," he said. Elias looked at him, a discreet smile on his lips. "I don't miss 2 graduations in the same lifetime." Liam laughed. "That in there," he paused, "was intense." "Welcome to the service, son." Elias patted his shoulder. "The battlefield changes, but politics remain the same." Liam became serious for a moment. "They humiliated you, Dad." Elias shook his head. "No, son, they tried and failed." "But why?" he insisted. "Why do that to you?" Elias looked out at the sea, pensive. Because people who speak the truth are inconvenient, and because sometimes loyalty scares those who live behind a facade. And what do? We move forward. Elias turned to him. The best revenge is to remain standing. Liam smiled, but there was something resolute in his eyes. Elias realized that boy was no longer a cadet. He was a man. The father felt the light weight of assignment pride. He knew the world would test him again, but now Liam had the steel of the Vance name in his blood, and no institution, no policy, no commander would ever be able to erase that. In the distance, Commander Alaric watched the two, in silence. Ward approached him, hands clasped behind his back. "You know people will be calling for your head for intervening, don't you?" said the Black Cloak. Alaric let out a heavy sigh. "Let them call." He looked at Elias and Liam. "There are times when duty means silencing protocol." Ward smiled, satisfied. "It's good to see that there are still men like that." Alaric kept his gaze fixed on the horizon. "No," he paused. "It's good to see that there are still families like that." That night, when the academy lights went out, a single flag remained fluttering on the main mast. The Atlantic wind blew, carrying with it the echo of what had happened there. A reminder that honor is not granted by decree, but earned with blood and character. And, as the last floodlights dimmed, Elias Vance's shadow merged with the sea, firm, serene, unshakable. Because certain battles, as he had said, are not won with weapons, they are won with loyalty. And no one, absolutely no one, messes with a Marine's family. 3 days after the ceremony, the calm of Fortress Brava Academy concealed a silent storm. The incident between the security guards and Sergeant Elias Vance had spread like wildfire through the corridors, naval bases, and internal communication networks. Officially, nothing had happened, but unofficially, everyone knew. The name Vance was whispered among recruits and instructors, among commanders and cadets. Some called what happened an act of indiscipline. Others, the greatest demonstration of courage and loyalty that academy had ever seen. The truth, as always, lay in the middle, and Alaric knew that better than anyone. He was in his office, watching the sea through the wide glass window. The rain softly hit the glass, making the horizon gray, undefined. On the table, the incident report, coldly worded, unemotional, as if describing a technical fault, not a human error. Incident 1027. Improper security intervention during graduation ceremony. Presence of veteran Sergeant Elias Vance, Navy, retired. Interference by instructors of the Aquatic Tactical Force, Black Cloaks. Peaceful resolution. No casualties, no material damage. Consequence, public embarrassment. Alaric sighed. Public embarrassment. That's what they called humiliating a hero in front of his own son. A knock came at the door. "Enter," he said. Ward came in, his uniform impeccable, his face more serious than usual. "Sir." He placed a folder on the table. "Update on the Vance case." Alaric flipped through it. Reports, statements, internal camera footage. "Has the council made a statement yet?" "Yes, sir. They want a meeting." Ward paused. "And they want Elias present." The commander looked up. "They want him to defend himself?" "They want him to keep quiet," replied dryly. The silence that followed was as thick as lead. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. "Will he attend?" Alaric asked. He said yes. Ward crossed his arms. "But he won't beg. He said he would just tell the truth and leave." Alaric offered a brief smile. "That sounds like him." Ward hesitated before adding, "Sir, with your permission, I think the council is trying to silence him for good. They want to review the Operation Hydra process, reopen old wounds." Alaric stood up, walking to the window. "And they want to use him as a scapegoat." "Yes, sir." The commander was silent for a moment. Then he turned. "Schedule the meeting and let them know I will be present." Ward raised an eyebrow. They won't like that. It's not the first time they haven't liked me, Alaric replied with a half smile, and probably won't be the last. The next day, the Navy Disciplinary Council met in one of the Academy's most austere rooms. 12 senior officers, all in uniform, sat in a semicircle. The air was saturated with formality and cynicism. Elias entered unescorted, only in his ceremonial uniform. The eyes of each member followed him as if observing a defendant. He did not bow. He just stood firm, like someone facing the sea before a storm. Admiral Castor, head of the council, was the first to speak.
Sergeant Vance. The voice was cold, almost robotic. You are here because of your conduct during the graduation ceremony of the last class of the Fortaleza Brava Academy. Elias did not respond. He just looked at him. Castor continued. There was an incident that compromised the order and image of the institution. You intervened in a security procedure disrespecting local authority. I was accosted, sir, Elias said, his voice low, firm. And I defended myself with words. No protocol was violated. Castor cleared his throat. There are those who disagree. There are those who fear what they don't understand, Elias retorted. A murmur grew among the officers. Castor leaned slightly forward. Be careful with your tone, Sergeant. You should be careful with your memory, Elias shot back, because what happened that day was not an incident. It was a reflection of something much larger. Explain yourself. Elias took a deep breath. For 20 years, I served under this flag. I followed orders. I carried dead comrades. I defended this country without asking who the enemy was. And when I returned, I realized that the enemy was sitting in rooms like this, behind desks, wearing medals they didn't earn. The silence was absolute. Ward, standing at the back, held back the urge to smile. Castor frowned. Are you insinuating that this council is not worthy? Elias gave a tired half smile. I don't insinuate, Admiral. I state it. One of the officers slammed his hand on the table. Withdraw! But before Elias could move, the door opened. Commander Alaric entered. The impact was immediate. Everyone stood up by instinct. Commander, this is a closed session, Castor said, visibly irritated. Then consider me part of the reserve, Alaric replied, with a slight sarcasm. I am here as a witness. Castor clenched his fists. Whose side are you on? Alaric stared at him. On the side of truth. Elias turned his face, containing a slight smile. The meeting dragged on for hours. Each question posed to Elias was answered with military precision. No word out of place, no tremor. When it was all over, Castor announced coldly, "The council will deliberate in secret." Elias merely nodded and left. Ward was waiting for him outside, leaning against the wall. "Nice speech in there." Elias gave a half smile. "I didn't make a speech. I just said what no one else has the courage to say. That's why they respect you," Ward said, "and that's why they fear you." Alaric joined them. "The decision will come in 2 days," he warned, "but don't expect justice." Elias shrugged. "I expect nothing, Commander, just to be left in peace." 2 days later, the decision came. Elias Vance was officially admonished for inappropriate conduct in an institutional environment. No practical sanction, but the message was clear. They wanted to erase him gradually. Liam received the news in the training base barracks, where he was already beginning the tactical adaptation program. He read the notification on the terminal, felt his stomach churn. Inappropriate conduct. The same man who had saved hostages, exposed corruption, and trained generations of soldiers. He turned off the terminal and took a deep breath. Then he picked up his unit's insignia, a metallic trident, symbol of elite divers, and placed it on the table. Inappropriate conduct. The words burned within him. That night, young Vance made a decision. He left without warning, walked to the academy dock. The wind carried the scent of a storm. There, alone, he found his father, as if he knew he would be there. Elias was sitting on the end of the pier, looking at the dark sea. "I thought you were already asleep, boy." "I can't," Liam replied. "I heard about the decision." Elias nodded, without turning. "Me too." Liam approached, furious. "They called you dishonored, Dad, after everything?" "Leave it," Elias said. "It's not worth the effort." "How can you say that?" Elias finally looked at him. "Because I learned that honor doesn't depend on who writes the report. It depends on who you are when no one is looking." Liam fell silent, swallowing his anger. The sound of waves crashing against the dock was the only noise between them. Elias continued, "You want to make a difference? You want to change things? Then go in there and show what it means to be a Vance. Show that integrity still exists." Liam took a deep breath, trying to contain his emotion. "And you?" Elias looked at the sea. "Me?" He gave a slight smile. "I've already fought the wars I needed to. Now it's your turn." His son nodded slowly. "Then promise me one thing, Dad." "What?" "That when I'm out there, you'll be here waiting for me." Elias placed his hand on his shoulder. "Always." The two stood there in silence, watching the sea side by side. In the following weeks, the name Vance ceased to be a whisper and became a symbol. Cadets began to cite him in military ethics classes. The Black Cloaks mentioned him in training as an example of conduct.
And even Commander Alaric, discreetly, began to advocate for revisions to internal policies regarding veterans' treatment. The system, of course, resisted. But something had changed, and that change began with Liam. He trained intensely, always pushing himself further. The instructors noticed, the boy carries his father's soul. And one morning, at the end of a submarine exercise, Ward, now chief instructor, approached him. "Your father once told me that the sea teaches two things," he said, looking at the horizon. "That it does not forgive carelessness and does not accept cowardice." Liam nodded. "He told me the same." Ward stared at him. "And do you believe that?" "I do, and I will prove it." Ward smiled. "Then, welcome to the team, Echo." Liam did not reply. He just looked at the sea and thought of his father. The name, Vance, more than a surname, was now a legacy. Scene 5, Last Oath. The sea was calm that morning, a kind of calm that only comes after a storm. The pier of the Atlantic Tactical Operations Base shone under the rising sun, reflections dancing on the waves. The distant sound of engines, the creaking of ropes against the masts, the measured rhythm of boots echoing on the platform. Everything seemed ready for something important, and it was. That day, the new Deep Action Fleet, the Navy's most modern unit, would be inaugurated. And among the new designees was a name that drew attention: Lieutenant Liam Vance, newly integrated into the Black Mantles. The ceremony would be discreet, by order of Central Command, but the buzz already filled the corridors. There was curiosity, respect, and even a certain fear. After all, everyone knew the Vance surname and what that name represented. Elias arrived early. He wore a simple suit, without decorations. His gray hair closely cropped, his gaze as attentive as ever. No one had announced him, but no one dared stop him from entering. The guards at the gate simply observed him in silence, some instinctively straightening their posture. He walked through the courtyard to the main area, where the Aegis 9 submarine rested in dry dock, a colossal structure, a symbol of new naval power. Liam would be among the officers responsible for the first test mission. Elias stopped and looked at the metallic colossus. How many men had he seen embark, not knowing if they would return? How many times had he bid farewell to the sea, swearing it would be the last? And yet, there he was again. drawn by that same call. Behind him, a familiar voice broke the silence. "I thought you wouldn't show up." Elias turned. Commander Alaric was approaching him, his white uniform gleaming under the sun. "I thought I wouldn't be welcome," Elias replied. Alaric gave a slight smile. Here, no one would dare say that aloud. The two greeted each other with a discreet nod. There was mutual respect, not of rank, but of experience. "He is ready," Elias said, "more than he imagines." Elias looked at the submarine again. He always was. He just needed to believe. "You know the boy is the youngest Black Mantles officer in 2 decades, don't you?" Elias shrugged, a proud gleam in his eyes. "He was born for this." "Like his father," Alaric commented. Elias smiled, tiredly. "Perhaps, but I hope he doesn't have to carry the same ghosts." Alaric hesitated. "You know the Hydra case was closed. Your name was cleared." Elias took a deep breath. "Names don't matter, Commander. Only what we leave behind." Alaric nodded, silently. There was too much wisdom in that simplicity. The ceremony began shortly after. Perfect rows, anthems, speeches, the usual protocol. But when Liam appeared, dark blue uniform, firm gaze, the atmosphere changed. He was no longer the nervous boy from graduation. He was a made man, shaped by principles no one could break. He went up to the stage to receive the Black Mantles emblem, presented by Alaric himself. But before the commander extended the badge, Liam spoke. "Commander, with all due respect, I have something to say." A murmur ran through the officers. Alaric, surprised, took a step back. "Speak, Lieutenant." Liam turned to the audience. 3 years ago, in this very academy, I saw my father, a man who served 20 years, treated as an intruder. I saw the uniform I dreamed of honoring used as a barrier against him. That day, I learned something, that the uniform doesn't make the soldier. Honor does. Some officers lowered their gaze, others shifted uncomfortably. Liam continued. "Today, I am here with the same name, the same blood, and the same purpose. Not to fix the past, but to ensure that no worthy man has to go through what he did." He paused, took a deep breath. "Therefore, before accepting this emblem, I want to make my oath, not to the institution, but to those who fight for it, and to those who are forgotten when the war ends." Alaric watched him in silence. Then, without saying anything, he handed him the emblem, with a firm salute.
It was approval that needed no words. Liam took it to heart and raised his chin. At the back of the hall, Elias stood motionless, but his eyes gleamed. The ceremony ended with applause, sincere, not merely ceremonial. As the officers dispersed, Liam walked among them, greeting comrades, exchanging quick smiles. But his gaze sought a specific face. He found him near the exit, by the pier, his father. Elias waited for him, silent, his hands in his pockets. When their eyes met, the world seemed to stop. Liam walked up to him, slowly. "I thought you wouldn't come." "I thought you didn't want me to come," Elias replied. The son chuckled softly. "You're too stubborn for that." For a moment, they stood in silence, only the wind and the distant sound of waves. Then Elias looked him up and down. "You've changed." "I hope for the better." "Stronger," said his father, but still with that look of someone who carries the weight of the world. Liam looked away, trying to hold back his emotions. "I learned from the best." Elias nodded, without smiling. "And now, where are you going?" "First field mission. Aegis 9 will test the North Circle route. 3 days of full submerged navigation." Elias raised his eyebrows. "The frozen hell, not bad for a first dive." Liam smiled. "You faced worse." "Me?" Elias shook his head. "I just survived long enough to see you get here." His son looked him in the eyes, and that's all I needed to hear. Elias took a deep breath. "Go on, son. Make the name count." Liam nodded and, before stepping away, saluted. But this time, Elias returned it.
a firm hand, a steady gaze. It was more than respect, it was the passing of a legacy. Hours later, the Aegis 9 submerged into the Atlantic, cutting through the deep blue with almost silent precision. Liam was in the control room, monitoring the readings. Everything seemed perfect, except for the weight in his chest, the memory of his father on the pier. But he knew what Elias would say. "Focus, son. The sea doesn't forgive distraction." The exercise proceeded as planned. On the second day, a sensor problem forced the team to manually adjust the navigation system. Liam took temporary command, guiding the crew calmly, without hesitation. His performance was impeccable. When the submarine resurfaced, the command's message arrived. Mission successful. Lieutenant Vance, exemplary performance. Liam looked at the horizon. He didn't smile. He just closed his eyes, breathing in the salty air. He knew that somewhere on the coast, his father would be looking at the same sea. Elias was, on the same pier, sitting, hands crossed, the wind hitting his face. The portable radio beside him crackled, a familiar voice. "Ward, Aegis 9 is back, mission accomplished." Elias simply replied, "I know." Silence. Then Ward added, "The boy is good, very good." "I said he would be." Elias closed his eyes. "He has that which cannot be taught." Ward hesitated. "Proud?" Elias chuckled softly. "Proud is an understatement." He looked at the horizon once more. The sun slowly set, painting the sea in gold and blood. And in that instant, Elias understood. All the wars, all the wounds, all the sacrifices had led to this moment. Not for victory, but for continuity. Because a soldier's true oath was not to the country, nor to command. It was to those who came after, to those who inherited the mission. Months later, at the Brave Fortress Academy, a new portrait was hung in the Hall of Honor. Not of an admiral, nor of a commander, but of a sergeant. Elias Vance, 20 years of service, strength, loyalty, and honor. Below, a simple inscription. Not all heroes march to applause. Some teach others how to do it. Liam walked up to him, silent unveiling ceremony. He stood still before the portrait for long minutes, in silence. Then he saluted. Behind him, Alaric watched in respect. Ward, arms crossed, did too. When Liam left, the commander commented, "Do you think he knows?" Ward replied, "He always knew." The wind blew, gently swaying the flag over the hall. And for an instant, it seemed as though the sea itself was saluting. Because, in the end, some battles are not won with weapons, but with loyalty. And no one, absolutely no one, messes with a Marine's family, not while their brothers in arms are around.